who are opposed. The public not speaking will be read into the record. We will then give the applicant and/or their representative an opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony stated into the record from the public before we close the public hearing. After that point, we will receive no more testimony. The time limits are 30 minutes for the applicant's presentation, 3 minutes for public testimony, and 15 minutes for applicant rebuttal. I would ask that you direct all of your testimony to me and not to the audience. Are there any questions regarding these proceedings tonight? Not seeing any, we will proceed with case number MSP 22-0007.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request for the preliminary approval of Bennett Estates, a major subdivision consisting of 16 residential lots. I'm sure you're very familiar with this property. You have recently heard this case, or a case on the subject property for a rezone from agriculture to rural, and the Board of County Commissioners have since had a public hearing on this matter and approved the rezone from agriculture to rural to allow for the subdivision to move forward. The request for the rezone was approved in case number ZON 22-0004. In fact, the rezone and the subdivision application were submitted concurrently. However, because staff did not want to undermine the hearing examiner's recommendation on the zone change as well as the board's, we felt that we could not run them at the same time. We had to make sure that the zone change was approved first, and then that would allow us to move forward with the subdivision application, which is why we're here before you tonight. The subject property is located off of Highway 53 at the intersection with Mountain View Road to the north. It consists of 80 acres. I believe the photo you can see on the slide is slightly outdated. There has been an access road punched through. I think maybe a portion of the property may have been logged since then, but it does still have significant amount of vegetation. The property is fairly flat. It has slopes that are, I believe, less than 5% grade. The applicant will be constructing an access road for the interior lots through the center of this subject property, which will be in line with Mountain View Road to the north. The zoning, as you can see, has been updated. It's currently rural. The comp plan designation is suburban. And the comp plan designation does allow for division of land, or actually, I believe it states that underutilized parcels can be developed in a more intense manner. This is the layout of the proposed subdivision. As you can see, the newly proposed road will terminate in a cul-de-sac. There will be an access easement that will be extending to the southern property line, and that's consistent with our current regulations, where if an access is needed to parcels beyond, dedication of either right-of-way or easement shall be made through the platting process to facilitate for a future connection. Each residential lot will consist of 4.5 acres net and 5 acres gross. Water will be provided via individual wells, and effluent discharge will be treated via individual septic and drain fields. The interior road will connect to Highway 53. These are some of the photos of the property in question. You have a photo key. I don't know how visible it is, but each picture corresponds with the location and orientation that the applicant was facing when they took them. So it's a fairly flat site, fairly easy to develop. We don't foresee there being any stormwater issues. It is over the aquifer, so we don't foresee there being any issue with water supply as well. The applicant did submit a groundwater quantity report that addresses the minimum flow requirements for domestic use. Through the agency comment period, we got all the basic comments. The applicant will have to obtain a right-of-way encroachment permit from the Idaho Transportation Department, and they will have to work closely with the highway district in terms of the the interior road construction meeting highway district standards. That road will be dedicated to the public. Health department had general septic system requirements, and fire district had just comments regarding access and street signs. We received 3 comments in opposition of the request. I didn't find there any explanation as to the opposition, but I recall from the zone change application on this property, the concerns were raised with respect to traffic and additional trips being generated. Because we didn't receive any comments raising concerns for the need for a traffic impact study or the least bit being a trip generation analysis, we really don't have any concerns at this time. Staff analysis is that we believe that the compatibility and the consistency of the proposed density and lot sizes, the potential for 5-acre parcels on this property through this zone change were vetted through the previous application. We find that the proposal is consistent and compatible with the existing development pattern in the area, being that a majority of the parcels are 5 acres, 5 to 10 acres in size. And so we believe that this application for a subdivision will not deviate or cause any significant impact if it is approved. And we believe that, like I said, it's consistent and compatible with the existing development. We believe that the applicant can and will be able to comply with the conditions of approval and construct the infrastructure prior to final plat submittal, which will of course be reviewed by staff again, and the board will deliberate on the matter should the preliminary application be approved. I stand for any questions that you have at this time.
I have none at this time. Thanks, Vlad. Okay, we can hear from the applicant or their representative.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Examiner. It's nice to see you again. Even nicer to see you with a mostly empty room, so kudos for that.
Name and address for the record.
Jeremy Terzulli, project coordinator with Olson Engineering based in Post Falls, Idaho. I personally reside in Hauser, Idaho. Here on behalf of the Kerr family and this 16-acre, or rather 16-lot subdivision. This should come as no surprise. We've been very transparent throughout this whole process that we would like to change the zoning and bring forth a major subdivision. County staff always does a great job, and so I'm just going to be rather brief, sort of piggyback off of what Vlad had brought. All of the standards for subdivision of this nature are being met with this request with Panhandle Health District, the 5-acre minimum lot size, 5 gross acres and 4.5 net. We've been working very closely with all the agencies. We're actually quite far along in our improvement plans and our construction drawings. We've received a lot of comment, and we're working closely with ITD, Lakes Highway District, Panhandle Health District, and all the other agencies. We believe that the request fits all of the review criteria that the county has, but I wanted to offer a little bit of additional information, perhaps some context to some of the comments that we've seen received, and specifically with regard to Lakes Highway District. So there's a bit of a overlap in a gray area when we're submitting for a plat approval in what is final construction drawings and a final plat that will be recorded with the county. What we received from Lakes felt a lot more like improvement plans review and comments, so I wanted to address those a little bit. And specifically, the comment letter provided for this request in item 2, which states that the supplemental information provided in the application for subdivision is inaccurate or misleading. The applicant states in their application for subdivision that the road is being designed to meet or exceed current highway district standards. This when the applicant has approached the district separately from their application to the county to request approval for a reduction in the minimum required road construction standards. Why I'm addressing this specifically, it seems as though the way this is written that we went in there and asked for a reduction in width or a reduction in the base of the road or something to the effect that we're trying to weasel our way into a substandard road section. I'm not sure if that was the intent, but I would like to offer some clarification there. We are fully aware that the highway district standard for road construction is a 2-inch section of asphalt over 4 inches of crushed over 12 inches of ballast. That is in their design standards. We are fine with that. I provided the narrative in October of last year, and at that point in time, we had every intent and continue to have every intent to build a road that meets their standard. While through the planning and the due diligence process, we recognize that 12 inches of ballast, right, so that rests under the 2 inches of asphalt, the 4 inches of crush, which will be imported and compacted. That 12 inches of ballast would be obtained from a surface mining pit about 1.5 miles down the road. We recognize that we had very similar pit run underneath this site and that perhaps we could use a borrow pit on the site, save the highway and ITD from putting a couple hundred dump trucks on the road to bring in that ballast. We could mine it on site, we could run it through our screens, and we could put an adequate ballast section from the site without having to come and go with all of these dump trucks. We would work closely with the geotechnical engineer to make sure. So the owner of Olson Engineering, Eric Olson, and a geotechnical engineer went to the board and requested to speak and ask if, in lieu of an imported 12-inch ballast section, we could mine it on site, being overseen by the geotechnical engineer with his stamp on it, and say, this is a comparable road section to the one that is in your standards. That was denied by the board, by Lakes, and we moved on. But again, this item 2 here, it kind of left a bad taste in our mouth, where it was like, it felt as though it was, we were trying to slide something past people, and we never were. We were asking for an engineered road section in lieu of importing 12 inches of ballast from a pit 1.5 miles down the road. So I just wanted to offer clarification on that. In addition to the Lakes Highway District comments, I want to point to item 3 in their letter, 3E specifically, where it is stated that for preservation of roadway safety, speed, capacity, and the district desires a 75-foot building setback from the road rights-of-way. There's a very good chance that all of these structures get built 75 feet because it's going to be a rural area, larger homes, probably shop lots. However, the county does have their own setback requirements, and if we run into an area where perhaps there's some topography issues or a lot seems to lay out better to have one of these home sites slightly closer to the road, I think we would like to default to the county public roadway front yard setbacks rather than memorialize a 75-foot setback. There's a good chance that's where they wind up anyway, but in certain instances, we may want to default back to the county standards for front yard setbacks. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not a deal breaker on our end, but again, to memorialize that as a condition of approval seems a little bit of an overreach. That's our position on that. As far as, I had mentioned about ongoing communication with ITD, they didn't feel any additional studies were required. We're to the point of submitting for an encroachment permit if we get this approval. We've communicated regularly with them. We know what their criteria will be for access to the site. Other than that, we believe that it's incredibly consistent with the surrounding area and the way the area has developed out. We've reviewed the agency comments and have no issues with any of those. There seem to be standard comments that we're in agreement with. And with that, do you have any questions?
Did you get any input as to why they wanted to deny the?
We did. So it has to do, let me just back up for a second. A lot of people confuse me with an engineer. I'm not a licensed engineer. I work several jobs, one of which is I act as a consultant for Olson Engineering as their project manager. I'm not a licensed engineer. I understand enough about engineering. It had something to do with the rock in the ballast having, I believe, a single flat face for compaction purposes. And so that goes over mine and your skis a little bit, but there's something to do with that. However, the geotech that we consulted with felt that compaction could be achieved with the pit run that we assumed was on site. We would have dug a few test pits, confirmed what we thought was there, figured out a few spots for some surface mining, but it has to do with this fractured face of that ballast marrying with the piece of rock next to it and creating an appropriate compaction. That's my understanding of it. I could provide a memo from the geotech if that would be helpful.
No, just curious.
Okay, that was what we heard.
And any input on the 75 feet?
We didn't really get much feedback on that. We are providing that easement for future connectivity if possible, or if needed. It's unlikely that that will ever be utilized. If you look at the big picture out there, there's an east-west road south of here, which will likely, and it could loop up and connect to here, but you've got a lot of 5 and 10 acre parcels. This is in essence a dead-end road with 16 residences on it. I don't see any health and safety issues, even if somebody's going 45 or 50 miles down this road. The sight lines are vast. So if a home site 40 or 50 feet from the road as opposed to 75, common sense seems to indicate that that's not problematic. So we didn't receive any reasoning behind that request.
And is your client the land developer? And this is a land development deal as opposed to a build, complete build?
My client typically collaborates with a few local builders, and they run the development side and then partner with the home builder either to purchase the lots up front or upon the sale of the land home package, everybody sort of gets their cut. But yeah, my client is a generational developer in the area that works with local builders.
Okay. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't have any. Yes.
I'd like to provide some clarification if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yep, please go.
Once again, for the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. Couple points I'd like to make is Mr. Terzulli stated that he kind of went through the comments provided by the Highway District. As you have read the staff report, there is a follow-up comment from the Highway District stating that the concerns and comments that were raised in the initial letter can be addressed prior to final plat approval. And we always ask for a follow-up comment if there is inconclusive information or direction in the original letter, because some of the comments that we received really don't give us a clear direction on how to condition or place conditions of approval. That's the first thing. The second thing, I'd like to, and perhaps you could ask Mr. Terzulli to make a rebuttal on that issue as well, but I'd like to caution you from deviating from any requirements from the highway district. I don't believe we have the, from my most recent experience on a similar project that was going through the review process, it had stalled because our elected officials wanted to deviate from what the highway district had requested. And I would like to caution you that if you do decide to go that route, that may not be acceptable to the highway district. I don't know that with certainty, but it's unlikely that the district would be on board for the approval of the final plat unless they receive all the dedications and setbacks as have been stated in their initial letter. So we don't have our attorney here, but that could be also asked at the board level when we get to deliberations. But I would strongly caution you from deviating from the highway district requirements. And I'm sorry, that must have been something I should have had a discussion with Mr. Terzulli, but he can step up and also address that as well. But we as a department have a concern when it comes to deviating from highway district requirements.
Got it. Thank you. We'll see if we have any public comment first before, okay? You're with, yeah. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
No one but staff.
Okay, then rebuttal.
Again, Jeremy Terzulli with Olson Engineering. Appreciate your comments, Vlad, and I do apologize that I didn't give you forewarning that I might bring that up. It kind of came to me this afternoon. Like I said, the 75-foot setback kind of contradicts county code. Not a deal breaker for us. It isn't. If it ends up being memorialized in the conditions of approval, I do believe that we will be able to work with that. The other comment I provided was simply a clarification. I didn't want it to be left unstated in the facts and findings because I felt that the wording of item 2 in there could lead a reader to believe that we were trying to pull a fast one on everyone. I just wanted clarification there. With regard to the other standard, the 75-foot setback, don't love it, but if it gets memorialized, we have large lots and I think we can work around it. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Not having any other public or testimony to take, this concludes our hearing this evening on MSP 22-0007. Thank you.